back to Marketing Connected. I'm your host, Xin Ying, and you're tuned into In Conversation, a series where we, as the title suggests, are in conversation with the industry's brilliant minds and experts. We have in the studio with us today Hattie Marsden, the founder of Truwater Advisory. She started the firm earlier this year, but prior to that, she was with BCG, SI Partners Global, and also Deloitte China. Hattie is going to bring us on a little deep dive into mergers and acquisitions today. Thank you for coming on the show with me, Hattie.
Thanks so much for having me in, Xinying.
I'm very excited because this is a topic that I'm not too familiar with. Maybe from my corporate news background, a little bit here and there. But I believe you're more on the specialized side of mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah.
What industries do you tackle for M&As?
Yeah, great question. So we specialize across three kind of verticals. The first is marketing services, so possibly the most relevant for today's audience.
Yes.
But we also do work on technology services and then also in the general professional services ecosphere. Why those three? Because at the end of the day, even with all of the amazing AI products coming into the market, all of those businesses have a really key talent layer as part of them.
Okay, very interesting. Because the Marketing Interactive team actually first got to know you when you did the Happy Marketer and Dentsu deal. That was quite a big one. But could you tell us briefly about what is it that you actually do at Truwater Advisory?
Yeah, okay. And actually maybe the Happy Marketer deal, given we're on it, is a great example because that's kind of really our bread and butter and what people know us for. Where we are best known is for helping entrepreneurs within their specialist subsector to help them think about how might they grow the business and if maybe an exit of the business, so an M&A event might be part of that future. At the time I was working at my previous firm with Sam Olsen. One of the things we did when we sat down with Ratchet and Frantic, 2017, so a really long time ago now, was we actually just started the conversation with, the business is growing really well. They'd actually hit a really cool growth inflection point, but how can you continue that trajectory? Does it make sense to do that alone, or does it make sense to go and do it with a strategic partner? That kind of question really sums up the essence of what we do at Truwater. We help people think through that question, go it alone. If so, how best to do some of that, how maybe to tackle some of the blockers to that growth. And if it makes sense to do it with someone else, how do you prepare your business for sale? And also how to actually run a process that gets you the objectives that you're after.
Do you actually see this quite often in the marketing industry? Would you say that this is on the minds of founders or, company owners that they're like, okay, what is the next step? Do I need to, like you say, find a partner or maybe sell?
I think it probably is. I think I've probably got this quite uniquely privileged place where actually a lot of people get introduced to me and quite often they're at various levels of seriousness on it.
So it's not really like just one end of the spectrum, okay, I really want to suggest any part of the journey.
But I think quite often people are just curious. So they might not actually be thinking, I want to sell, but they want to know if they were to sell, what might the business be worth and what might be some of the things they could think about. So we definitely see people across that spectrum of seriousness. But I think, and again, this is where it depends on if you're a solo founder or if you've got a co-founder. Maybe quite often also those that are a bit more of a solo founder, it can be quite a lonely journey. It's just nice for them to have a think about some of these options.
Or have someone to talk to bounce off their thoughts of whether what they're thinking is the right way or the right path.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So what's your view on the M&A scene this year in Adland, both globally and regionally? Has there been a slowdown in the market or anything, or have you seen some interesting acquisitions in Adland recently?
Yeah, so look, I think 2025, I'm kind of calling it the year of polarization. Everyone's kind of testing the waters. Everyone's asking each other, buy side, sell side, what are you seeing? Is it busy? Is it not? It's a little bit of an echo chamber at the moment. So we've been trying to get back to the data and just be okay, what does the data say? Let's start there rather than,
hold your horses. Don't jump right into it.
Yeah, the whispers are important, but also the data is important. So when we look at it, 2024, actually deal volumes in our land were down by around 8%. So not a huge amount, but that was also in a year of 23 that wasn't amazing from a volume perspective. But actually deal value was up a bit. So what that's kind of suggesting to us is that there's a bit of a flight to quality.
Right.
And actually, when we then think through what we're seeing in our own client base, that reflects it quite well in that we're seeing for the really good businesses, there's not a fight, but there's definitely competition,
A scuffle.
a little scuffle, a little bit of competitive tension, which we obviously love for the best in class assets.
I see. So what are investors and strategic buyers actually like really looking for in marketing businesses today? Like based on your observation?
I kind of always talk about the 5 fundamentals. That's not just a today thing. That's it's been around for a long time. And then maybe we'll go on to the nuances of this year. The 5 fundamentals, number 1, is your business and the area you're in best in class? Number 2, is the business growing really well? So growth attracts investors, attracts strategic buyers, because quite often they're looking for ways to prop up their own business growth.
Yep.
And one of the mechanisms through which to do that is M&A. So I always say to people, if you're thinking seriously about selling, try and be growing at least 20% year on year. That gets harder the bigger you get, but that drives premium. Profit is also important. So specifically within kind of the marketing services world, we're seeing a lot of requests for businesses that are doing like 20%, 25% margins, 15% is a bit of a minimum threshold, because actually that's the margins that some of the big guys are running at. So they don't want to be diluted to that.
Okay.
And then the other 2 are management team. So have you got a really best in class team? And ideally not just one of you, ideally 2 or 3 awesome hard hitters that have got different strengths that can come to the table. One person is a little bit harder because buyers start to worry about key man risk. And then the last thing is have businesses got really awesome enterprise grade clients that the strategic acquirer would love to get access to. So that's kind of like, a bit of the hygiene stuff that we see year on year. I would say this year, though, that there's even more focus on financial discipline. So whereas maybe in previous years we'd get a deal through if a business had a soft quarter during a process, this year buyers are being a bit more cautious and they just step away from a potential acquisition if the numbers aren't where they were forecast.
Right.
So bit of a dull topic, unfortunately, but
Is that kind of because of the economic situation, downturn in markets, or broader things, or is it mainly an industry specific issue that budgets are tightening? They're not really looking at that.
do you know what? It's common across all industries, actually.
So-
I think everyone at the moment is still trying to buy into new skill sets. M&A will never go away. It is an important growth mechanism, but buyers are just more cautious, and so that's how it's playing out.
Right. So you do work a lot of founders. I think as we've gathered, that you are talking to them, you're advising them, you're also gathering where they stand in that 5 pillars that you just mentioned. Sometimes they're looking to sell, but sometimes they're not willing to let go of the reins. So what are some big mistakes founders make when they want to sell?
Probably the biggest mistake is not having put enough preparation into the process. And this plays out in 2 ways when we run a process for someone that perhaps hasn't had the time or the headspace to prepare in a way that ideally we recommend. So actually the first way is that maybe there's a few, buyers often refer to these as skeletons in the closet. So something that when you're running a business, it's a bit of a headache, bit of a noise, it's there in the background.
Don't want to think about it at the moment.
Maybe it was a bit naughty, but no one's realistically going to come and ask you as, a small business owner in Singapore.
Right.
But then when a buyer finds it through the PwC diligence team, it suddenly becomes this huge issue and can start to damage trust.
Right.
So it's much better, ideally, if you are aware of where some of those skeletons are in the closet, either to give them a spring clean or actually just to fess up
I'll
about
make a
them.
list. Stick it on the cupboard door and go like, okay, they're there.
Yeah. Honestly, quite often buyers, a process is around building trust. So if one of the ways you can build trust is to say, this isn't ideal, but here it is. We think it's manageable. Are you okay with it? So that's one area. The second is what I call operational drag. Fancy way to say it is really hard work running your own business. It is really hard work selling your business. In effect, that becomes a two-person job. And if you're a single founder,
It's tough.
you need to split yourself in two. And one of the things and challenges, again, we do see, particularly where businesses are perhaps quite reliant on the founder, is they get so involved in the process, maybe a bit of the eye comes off the business and performance can start to dip. And actually, that's exactly the moment you really need performance to be shining. So again, this is where, we talk about mentally preparing for a process. We talk about getting the team around you so that if you aren't 100% on business because you're on a bit of we're focusing on the process and selling externally, actually the business can still shine and thrive.
That's a very good note for the next question that we're heading into. So, what are some basic housekeeping companies need to get in order before they can even contemplate selling their agencies as an independent?
Okay. So we've got a framework for this, I'm afraid. I hope it's not too cheesy. Please,
Okay.
please forgive me.
Let's go at it.
Let's go at it. It's called the READY framework.
Okay.
So R is around resilient financials. So, I don't know. I have a whole bee in my bonnet around how some of the accounting support in Singapore is not at the quality it should be. So making sure your books are being closed monthly, making sure it's being run on an accruals basis, not on a cash basis. That's super key.
The basics of the accounting part.
Basics.
Get it.
E is around enterprise clients. So and revenue quality. We talked about this a little bit already, but have you got great clients? But also, have you got any client concentration issues? So that is really common with agencies in Singapore, particularly some of the more scaled ones. We see maybe one great marquee client is 30% of their revenue. And unfortunately, that can become a bit of a blocker. A is all around alignment of talent. So particularly if you're a sole founder, not a co-founder, have you got your next team behind you? And ideally, are they somehow going to be incentivized to deliver in the event of a sale? D is around differentiation. So again, we're really seeing that the assets that buyers are drawn to at the moment are those that are not, a more generalized digital marketing agency, but are best in class at something. So they're best in class at a specific area of the MarTech stack, or they are a house comms business, not a broader comms business tackling multiple sectors. And then Y is you, the founder. Are you mentally ready? And actually, this is really one that's kind of evolved from, the last 6, 7, 8 years of seeing founders go through this journey, and out the other ends of that earnout is sometimes we've seen founders, although theoretically they should be delighted that they've de-risked and got money on the table.
Cold feet. They're like, or
a little bit of that, but also actually a little bit sometimes of identity loss after they've exited from the business. Because even if they're involved in working with the buyer, sometimes it can be a bit different working for someone rather than running your own show.
Yeah.
And so helping people think what that might feel and think and look like out the other side as well.
See, so it's a mix of like the founder's personal feelings in there as well, because they build it from ground up. They gotta get through it, but also look at all the other aspects. So we've mentioned ready. Actually, it sounds not too bad.
Thanks.
In my opinion. Moving on from that, right? What does a best-in-class M&A process look like for marketing agencies then?
So we talked about preparation. Typically, the next step as part of an actual preparation process would be sitting down and creating some of the materials that you think a buyer might be looking for. And this is what I'm describing here is if you're to run a bit more of an outbound process here. Sometimes founders get approached inbound, which is great as well. In fact, it's even better.
Slightly easier, maybe.
Slightly easier, but even if people have approached you inbound, you want to be preparing some materials that succinctly outline some of the best bits of the business, but also honestly spotlight some of the ugly bits of the business. If you have a client concentration issue, let's be upfront about it.
Don't hide it.
Don't hide it, because also otherwise you're going to spend lots of time talking to people that then ultimately might pull away because a 20% concentration issue is an issue for them. And as a founder, time is your most precious commodity. Creating a great set of marketing materials that highlight the goods, are transparent around some of the less good, and then going and activating basically as many conversations as possible with partners you think are going to help you unlock your personal objectives. So this is really different for different founders. So for some founders, why they think about working with a strategic partner, it's actually all about the team. They're struggling to develop bigger, better career paths. For others, it's around financially de-risking. That tends to be in there for most people. For others, it's around how can I accelerate accessing a larger set of enterprise clients or breaking into a new segment we've been struggling to do ourselves. But understanding some of that why and then linking that up to who might help you unlock that, and therefore going and being targeted with the conversations you have can be quite powerful, rather than just spamming the entire market, which ultimately does get out to your competitors, can maybe not be the best look. It's then around really running a process where you're trying to shepherd all these potential dates into coming into line and actually understanding out of all of these potential suitors who's actually, I call it like, who's actually going to propose to you, who's actually going to put a term sheet on the table, who's going to offer a set of terms. And ideally taking the right amount of time to get potential suitors to that point at the same point in time, so that you can ideally compare different offers and decide which is going to be a great fit for you, financially, strategically, emotionally, and really take a step forward from there. That step is typically called kind of signing a letter of intent, LOI. Sometimes it's called heads of terms. I say to our clients that step is one of the most key steps, because actually that's the point in time when sometimes the negotiation leverage can flip a bit more to the buyer. And the reason for that is normally at that point in time, a buyer will request exclusivity. So they say, okay, we're getting engaged now. You've got to stop dating the other suitors.
Yeah. I want you just for myself, no one else.
Exactly.
Okay.
But that's also the same point in time they can go looking for some of those skeletons in the closets, and therefore you get some more of that scrutiny around some of that financial performance.
Right.
But ultimately, hopefully, if you have done some of that preparation, none of those skeletons appear, if you've got that team around you, being out there,
everything checks out,
delivering, it's then around, getting a great lawyer on board, really thinking through the commercial terms that are outlined in those detailed legal agreements, and signing the paperwork.
It sounds easy when you're explaining it, but I'm sure it's definitely more complex than it is. But yeah, I think there is also the question of like when an agency does sell, we always hear about multiple X's. What goes into the valuation multiple, and why do these numbers we hear about so often feel like guesswork? Can you walk us through that to simplify it for us?
I can get quite animated about this.
Okay.
I get a little bit frustrated when people really focus on valuations.
Oh, okay.
And I get this a lot as an advisor. People come to me and question 2 is, what valuation is my business worth? Because that is part of the language. But one of the problems with valuations is you can apply them in lots of different ways. But there's different bits of your P&L that you can apply a multiple to. So you could apply it to your profit before tax or your profit after tax.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And actually there's one very well-known, previously active buyer out there that would always apply it to after tax, and therefore when people talked about their multiples in the market, it always sounded higher than others, but it was being applied to a lower number. So perhaps giving the same overall deal value.
But there's no right or wrong in that, right? It's just a matter of like which they prefer to use.
There is no right or wrong.
Okay.
It's just a bit of the algebra equation to get to how to value you. Another reason why multiples can be confusing is, well, what year of numbers am I applying this to? Am I applying it to last year when I'm smaller? Am I applying it to this year? Am I applying it to in 5 years' time? Once I've grown amazingly with the buyer and all of these synergies have come in. And so I just always caution a little bit when people ask about multiples and try to bring it back to, well, what is the inherent value of this business? And therefore, what's the number we as a collective group should be targeting for?
Thank you for that. Very insightful. But let's talk earnouts.
Okay.
I think everyone, this is really interesting topic for those who are interested in knowing more about M&A. So is there a typical period for earnouts? And how long is too long? Is it always a trap, or generally do founders check out when that happens?
Actually, this is a topic that, again, people really benefit, and I can kind of see some of the lights going on when they get some of these concepts. Your first question, what sort of length of earnouts are we seeing? So back in 21, 22, the average earnout period that we were seeing was 3 to 4 years. And the rationale behind buyers using that sort of time period was honestly as a way to really lock in the talent in the business that they were buying.
I see. Okay.
And so by deferring some of the payments, they could be pretty confident that that founder and management team they were buying would stick around for at least that length of time. Where there's been a bit of a shift in the market in the past 2 years, particularly as we're seeing more private equity backed players come into the market, is a lot of the private equity is demanding that strategics who are buying another strategic, they need to integrate it quite quickly. And one of the downsides of having a longer earnout is it's very hard to integrate that business, because if you think about it, if you've got a seller who is being paid a multiple of a profit number, which is very neatly defined by the time it's in a final agreement, they might not play super nice with a colleague in a slightly different division, and they might not be the best at sharing revenue. So we've seen a real transition in the past 12, 18, 24 months where there are more deals on the table where the earnout period might be shorter, 12 to 18 months. It might also actually be linked to a business hitting a revenue multiple rather than an EBITDA multiple. But it really does depend on what the buyer is trying to do. So we're seeing a mix.
Right. Okay. So then how can founders analyze their company's performance, the broader M&A landscape, and also the marketing timing to maximize their exit value?
The $100, $1,000, $1 million, $10 billion. The $100 million question, honestly. The mantra we always say to founders is run your business as if you're about to sell, but not so that you have to sell.
Ooh, that's a very interesting thing to take out.
And part of the logic around some of this is it can be hard to predict where the market is going to go. So if you can try and have your business in a position where you can sell, if a really hot market opens up, then you can be reactive to that.
So you're just ready
opportunity.
to go.
Yeah.
Right. So now the deal is signed, the suitors have come, and contract signed and everything. Now what? So are there any common mistakes which founders tend to make at this point in time?
I think the thing that most founders are nervous about at the point they sign the deal quite often is telling their team.
Ooh.
Quite often for a lot of the indies in Singapore and Australia and other markets, maybe they started and for many years they, bang the drum of we are independent and that is what makes us special.
I see.
That's not the case for all, but for some that can be, a key key part of their DNA.
It's like their pride of like, okay, we've done this from ground up. This is who we are. We're independent in that sense.
So even if they're selling to a really cool challenger network out there, the likes of Brain Labs, or even Stagwell, who are, more and more coming to the table now with their recent acquisition of ADK, for a lot of the founders, that's something they get very nervous about. And they're sort of WhatsApping me like the night before, Hattie, how do I tell them? How do I do this?
How do I break the news?
Yeah. Honestly, almost 9 times out of 10, the team, where there's genuine support for that leader, are genuinely happy. And as well, as long as a founder can really effectively communicate the why and some of the opportunities that can open up for the team, it generally gets perceived really well. But one of the mistakes I have seen is founders letting the acquirers take the lead on communication to their team.
Oh, okay.
I think maybe sometimes that's from a place of being slightly nervous. And sometimes actually it's just the buyer really excited because they're like,
true.
wow, we've got in, we've got all these cool people.
Let's get it going.
We're excited, let's have a party. And genuinely, quite often from the buyer's perspective, it can be in good with
good intentions, maybe.
Yeah, with good intentions. But I would say, if possible, make sure that's planned out. Make sure the team are hearing it from you, and also do the deal that you're excited to communicate to them.
But if you had to give our audience one piece of advice, maybe a listener that's possibly looking to sell, what would that be?
So for me, this all comes back to knowing your why. Why do you want to potentially sell your business? And the reason I ask that is because sometimes founders can set out on a journey of why they think they want to sell their business, but actually it can be something very different. But they end up kind of, having invested in certain
the
amount.
first reason.
Yeah.
Investing there, like, okay, maybe that's the reason why, and then they cannot really get themselves out of it in a sense.
Exactly. So I think I really encourage founders to be really honest with themselves around what their why is, honest with themselves, honest with any third parties they're taking advice from if possible, and also honest with their co-founders if they have them as well. Because one of the other really common things we see is 2 co-founders, maybe they're at slightly different ages or they just have slightly different family situations. And they've worked together for so long, they don't want to upset each other, so they just go along with each other.
Right.
But actually trying to flesh out some of those slightly more difficult conversations at the beginning is only going to benefit you.
So many nuances to think of. Like, there's the personal side of running a business alongside the businessy side of things, where we need to grow, we need to make sure the team is well taken care of. So lots of things to consider. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today in this episode with Hattie. Thank you so much for the insightful conversation.
Thanks for having me on. It's so nice.
I feel like I've learned a lot about M&As, and yeah, it was really great to hear from you. But for the listeners out there, fear not. Although this interview with Hattie of Truwater Advisory is over, you can have a look at your favorite podcast platforms to find more In Conversation episodes and other marketing connected interviews. Once again, thank you for tuning in to Marketing Connected, brought to you by Marketing Interactive. Goodbye, everyone.